So I was doing some research for a project that I'm working on this week, talking about Athlean-X and his recent run-in with the quote-unquote optimal bros and the suboptimal debate and all that crap. And I think you guys will enjoy that video. A lot of you will probably be surprised at the stance that I end up taking there. However, in my research for that project, I inadvertently stumbled across a video by Athlean-X talking about ideal body fat percentages, and I watched a few minutes of that video. Well, I ended up watching the whole thing, but I watched a few minutes and I knew real quick I just had to chime in and say something about it, because Jeff literally contradicts himself to a fatal extent in that video within like a 60-second time span. I haven't seen anyone else address this, and I just felt like it needed to be mentioned. And so I'm just gonna play these clips back to back for you guys real quick, just so you can see what I'm talking about for yourselves.
Being lower than 15% body fat is going to compromise their performance as an athlete.
Right.
They've never trained an athlete. Anybody that ever says that has no experience with athletes. Certain athletes can get to that level, much lower body fat levels, not 6, but much lower body fat levels, or in some cases like DK Metcalf, 6, and excel. Then there's actually one that really is entertaining to me, because it sort of encapsulates everything we talk about. His name is Brian Clay. He was 5'10", 180, he was 8% body fat. 2008 Olympic champion for the decathlon. If it was ever an indicator of athleticism, it's the decathlon, right? It's the ultimate athlete. But 8% body fat wasn't holding him back. So we can dispel that idea that you have to be at a certain level in order to excel.
Right.
Now we talk about strength. And I think there's a general notion out there that if you are too lean, your strength is going to suffer. I think the big flaw to this method here, and again, that might piss some people off, but it is what it is. You are not Thor Bjornsson.
Nope.
You are not Eddie Hall. You are not one of the elite level competitors. And what you're doing is you're applying these standards and these generalities to your own training, a lot of times as an excuse to not actually attempt to get leaner.
Now, these two takes took place literally back to back from one breath to the next within 60 seconds of each other. I'm not exaggerating. And I find it hilarious that Jeff is apparently so painfully incapable of seeing his own biases, even as they shine through so glaringly obviously in his videos, in videos such as this one. He uses one of the freakiest wide receivers of this generation and of pretty much any generation, as well as a gold medalist in the decathlon at the Olympics, as examples of why being ultra lean does not hamper athletic performance, thus supposedly proving his Athlean ideologies. But then on the flip side of that, he uses Thor Bjornsson and Eddie Hall, the super heavyweight freak of nature strongman, as an example of why you shouldn't bulk in order to try to maximize your strength, by saying that you are not Thor and you are not Eddie and you won't see the same results that they did, thus supposedly disproving the efficacy of the bulking and cutting ideology. But I'm also not Brian Clay, and I'm also not DK Metcalf. So the logic has to work both ways, Jeff. You are applying it down a one-way street here because you are overly biased in terms of how you favor leanness. But you can't use one freak of nature to prove your point and then use another freak of nature to disprove the point that you don't like. It doesn't work like that. The logic is either applied or it isn't. And as it stands with this video, all I can see is that you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, simply because you have a personal obsession with excessive leanness.
The look of the leanness, the leanness that you're trying to achieve, as an excuse to not actually attempt to get leaner.
And you are constantly applying that skewed standard to your millions and millions of subscribers in order to justify your own biased ideologies. And just a quick one for today, that's all I really wanted to point out here. I don't even necessarily disagree with that video as a whole. I actually thought there were a lot of good points made, but this was just such a massive and glaring contradiction to me here that I honestly find it shocking that Jeff could have possibly even reviewed this footage and still felt like it was okay to publish that video as is, even though he literally contradicts himself to a fatal extent and wholly disproves his own point, all basically within the same breath.